Those of you, hopefully, if you've been already on some of our webinars, you've already had a taste of this already, but nonetheless, we'll dive a little bit deeper today and certainly open it up to a lot of questions and answers later on, if there are any. Just to cover things very briefly, and I apologize for not using the slideshow presentation in PowerPoint only because I haven't quite figured out how to keep it from reconfiguring my computer when I do that. So just bear with me. I apologize if this is a little hard to read, but basically this slide here is showing you the basic pieces and elements of Exact Macola 10. And you can also note I also annotated this slide with the dates in terms of when we're going to be covering these in the series. But we're going to focus today on core ERP functionality, primarily in the area of manufacturing and distribution. And we'll also discuss a real advancement in terms of technology called callable objects. And we'll define very simply what that means, but ultimately, how it's going to impact you as a user. And you can also see this isn't in any real order other than just grouping the elements and segments of Exact Macola 10, but you can certainly see what's ahead as far as what we'll be covering in this series. So hopefully everyone will be able to join us over the next several Fridays for these presentations. Now, in talking about the core ERP side of things, I'm just going to make mention of this right now. We do have some YouTube videos that are out there. I'll show you a slide later on towards the end of the presentation that also has the ability to be able to access YouTube videos and so forth. So hopefully this will be entertaining, but also available to any of your associates who might be missing this particular session today. The structure of the core ERP side of Exact Macola 10, as opposed to past ways in which Macola has been merchandised in the past with modules and take this from this list and that from that list, what we've heard from customers over the years is that it doesn't really need to be simplified. This part of the solution should really be the easiest to figure out in terms of the basic functionality that is going to be included as part of Exact Macola 10. So as you can see, the core features of financial and accounting work. We'll go into a lot of this in more detail, particularly on the 29th when we cover that section of Exact Macola 10. Those of you who might still be using the progression version of Macola, hopefully you can certainly save that date because that'll be a date that I'm sure is going to be very exciting for you to be able to see, particularly some of the ways in which we have improved the accounting structure and processes in Exact Macola 10. So we're not going to cover finance and accounting in any depth today. That'll be on the 29th. However, we will talk about distribution and manufacturing. But as you can see, these aren't options and selections. These are what is included out of the box with Exact Macola 10. So we simplified the whole thing, and truly you'll have a package available to you or in your possession that you'll certainly be able to grow with over the years looking ahead. There's a few new features over on the right side of the screen that are new and are unique to Exact Macola 10. We'll talk a little bit about quality measurement. We've certainly seen over the years that many customers who particularly have formalized type quality inspection or testing functions often have to manage that outside of the system altogether. They have their own little separate system, homegrown or whatever, where they're able to manage the measurement of quality attributes as items are being received in from the back door or as they're being produced in manufacturing. Our quality measurement feature will now allow you to actually establish and set up within the confines of Exact Macola 10 specific quality and measurement criteria, standards, specifications, and so forth, and then be able to actually perform the actual verification and validation right within the framework of Macola 10. So we'll look a bit more at that in just a few moments. The purge and archive utility, that symbol there, GBK MUT, stands for the financial transaction table, of which there is really primarily only one in Exact Macola 10. It provides a lot of the benefits of financial reporting and analysis that you'll hear more about on the 29th. But nonetheless, we've created a utility that helps people sort of tidy up that table. Since obviously it stores so much critical information, we want to be able to give people all the tools necessary to keep that table as clean and efficient as possible. So that's one thing that we've developed and also built into the Core ERP function of Exact Macola 10. A little bit more, the last couple of bullets and so forth, we'll get more into that also on the 29th when we discuss a little bit more about the ease of use objective with Exact Macola 10, the concept of workspaces that you will in fact see some of today, but we'll dive deeper into that on the 29th. And obviously the fact that Exact Macola 10, it is pointed in the direction of becoming a browser-based solution. And we will touch on some of that today as well. Just to sort of explain or attempt to explain this term callable objects, for those of you who are not familiar with it, but essentially what it is, it's a way of truly opening up the application and the core features and functions and of the application itself, like entering a sales order. Everybody kind of knows it from a screen level, but obviously there's a lot of things that go on that go through that screen. And that's essentially what we've done with callable objects, is to expose through scripts that would allow other programs perhaps to be able to integrate directly into the object layer on many of our transactions and so forth. That has manifested over the years as far as making it somewhat difficult sometimes to create integrations from partner or third-party solutions or even homegrown type solutions. So therefore, these callable objects manifest themselves, or at least they provide themselves the ability now to be exposed as APIs, programming interfaces that does make integrations much more seamless, much easier, and much less expensive to perform. And then the other aspect of it is that they are also get exposed as web services, which basically means that many of these traditional transaction level or master level type functions that the ERP system does are now going to be browser-based supported. So therefore, and we'll see a few examples of that today, and that's really one of the ways in which you will see these callable objects today. But essentially what it essentially does, as you can see from the rest of this, is that it does open up now technology, and it does now really help you to leverage technology in order to enable your business. These are just some examples. We'll look at a few more of these. We'll look at a few more of these in detail once we get in and start exploring and touring the product itself. And one last slide. This is just a pictorial of the quality measurement flow, basic concept of it. Today, in our initial release of Exact Macola 10, we are supporting the purchase receipt side of it. We will be adding additional functionality, primarily for the production environment, in our next release of Exact Macola 10, which will probably be in the fourth quarter. But essentially, as items are being received in, as I explained earlier, they will be automatically routed to an inspection location. And at that point, it's more than just indicating whether they're good or bad and moving them out. At that point, you'll actually be able to use a inspection and test standard with actual criteria that you're going to measure or test, and be able to then, by doing that, enter the results. The system would validate the results, validate whether the item meets specification or not, and then from that point, the disposition of the product will be determined. So once again, we hope in providing this that a lot of people that have had these systems either be manual outside of the system altogether or perhaps a separate system, now they can truly integrate it into the Exact Macola environment. Okay, that's it for PowerPoint. I want to go over here now to the actual system itself, and that's where I'm at. You'll notice right away this is a web browser, so we'll see a little bit more of this, as I said, when we kind of get into some of the more extensive focus on ease of use that we'll do on the 29th. But as you would expect, being a browser-based solution, it does open up that world of mobility for you. That can certainly allow you to do more functions from the system, be able to observe more information from the system, from the convenience of a laptop just plugged into a hotel space, or even a tablet-type device like an iPad, iPhone, smartphone, Android devices, and so forth. So a lot more we'll cover in future sessions, but nonetheless, as you can see, we begin by opening up a web browser. Pretty much everything in terms of access to the system is done through this main user interface and this main user experience. What you are in fact seeing is a workspace, so to kind of give you a little sneak preview of what we'll cover on the 29th, this is essentially our idea behind utilizing the latest technology from Microsoft to create these workspaces. And these workspaces, our intent is that a workspace like this is going to be where you begin the day and where you end the day, which means you'll be able, in a 360-degree vision, you can access any part of the entire solution and even go outside the solution if necessary from the convenience of this one workspace. The workspace are role-based. They are based around certain personas in an organization. You can certainly see this one is designed for with a CEO in mind, but we have different kinds of workspaces that essentially allow any level in an organization, whether they're a CEO or a transaction level person, to be able to take advantage of all the benefits of a workspace. And then, if people look at this and think, well, gee, it kind of looks like your average run-of-the-mill dashboard, to an extent, that is kind of what it begins to look like when you're looking at key performance metrics and measurements and so forth. But the idea of a workspace is, in our case, your ability to configure menu picks on these workspaces that can essentially take you anywhere you want to go from the convenience of a workspace. It could be anywhere on the workspace, including an actual data point on the workspace, where these menu picks, as you see here, can be configured. So therefore, this becomes really a true, contextual type business intelligence. I'm looking at real-time information, and I'm also being able to act on it at exactly the same time. However, we still have accesses to the core ERP functions. We'll go there in a moment. And when we talk earlier, we'll talk on the next session on the 15th about business process management. Many of those functions and features can be accessed from this side of the interface itself. However, any one of these menus and any one of these steps, any one of these operations can also be configured into a convenient workspace. So once again, from the convenience of a mobile or a web-based, browser-based user experience, our intent really is to take control away from the software itself in terms of defining what your user experience is going to be like, and empower you to be able to define it and decide it in a more active way, so that you can actually truly design what your experience is going to be for a day. Now let's focus on ERP for a moment, and you'll notice that all these menus here essentially give you a very simple view of all the basic ERP functions, from finance and accounting to cash flow, order entry, and so forth and so forth. The security aspects, by the way, of Exact Macola 10 are also quite robust in the sense that they are both, they really are come in two directions, vertical in terms of what position level an individual is set up to have in an organization, but they are also horizontal in the context of being able to establish various roles that can be assigned to a user, and those roles will very clearly define the various accesses that a user will have, plus the specific functions that a user will be able to perform. So rest assured, in any environment that you might have, if you're concerned about security, which everybody is today, you'll be able to establish that security profile quite completely in this solution. These are all menu picks, as you can see. To perform a function, it really kind of depends on where you are and where you're at in a function. But I'm going to also use this screen to kind of show you what callable objects are all about. Not to really go into the details of them from a technical or an engineering standpoint, but I just want to kind of show you at this point how you're going to see them initially. And order entry is a great example of that. And I go into order entry a moment, and just a reminder, I sort of try to promise myself not to over-remind you of this, but I probably will. Any one of these menu picks can also be configured onto any workspace as well, so there's no absolute need to have to use this part of the system to access these things. You will be able to do anything from a workspace. Let's go into sales order entry for a moment and just sort of open up that screen. Now, when we initially announced and released Exact Macola 10, we announced it in April and we released it at the end of June. We did include a number of callable objects and something like 25 or 4 of them, something like that, in the initial release. And really the benefit in doing that was that they now become browser-based type applications as opposed to what was the traditional client-based application. That is still a work in process in terms of the fact that a lot of our engineering time and funding and resources right now are dedicated towards creating more and more of these callable objects. And our intent really is to eventually depart from the client-based kind of ERP structure that we've had in the past. However, in something like order entry, there is sort of a transition that you can actually see here. This screen I just opened up where a sales order gets entered, you should obviously be able, those of you who might be familiar with Macola know what this screen is and what it looks like. But however, this is an example of the client-based screen that we've had in the past. So, but nonetheless, even with that, it's a very efficient order entry vehicle because as you can see, everything is on one page, the header information as well as the line item information. Additional attributes for the line items could be added very simply and very easily from here. And the header information can be added to, or other aspects of the order can be added to here as well. And obviously a lot of information that pre-fills on an order entry screen comes from defaults that are set up for the customer and so forth. One other point about this client-based screen, we certainly are still enabling people to be able to customize or configure this screen. It's another bit of our language that we're trying to be careful with, customization versus configurability. What we're really making a stronger effort to make very clear to people is that our solution is highly configurable. So this screen itself can be configured in different ways. And when you talk about customization and you put it in the perspective of being a big deal with programmers and stuff like that, there's a lot less of that than we might have led you to believe in the past. This is really truly more a configurable type of solution. But nonetheless, this screen, for example, can be configured in any way that anyone would choose to. But this is also an example of the client screen that we are still have in Exact Macola 10. However, to show you what we're talking about as far as callable objects, is that one of our objectives, and I'm just going to get to it from here, although we could get to it directly on a workspace. But when we begin to look at a report like this, which shows all sorts of sales orders and even quotes for that matter, and take note always of the filtering, you'll see that. I might not point it out in all cases, but anything you can look at, you can certainly filter in many, many different ways so you can target the information that you're looking for. You're not having to go swim through a whole lot of detail to get to where you need to go to. However, what we also now include, and this is an example, of a callable object. This is a sales order entry screen, and this is a browser-based sales order entry screen. So you can envision today, now through the technology that we are adopting in Exact Macola 10 through the callable objects, that now we can use the convenience of a browser-based environment to be able to enter a sales order. Prior to that, we've been able to support things like quotations, but now we've listened to what our customers need. We've listened to where the industry and markets are going to, because over these years, businesses have become, their environments have become more complex, and we've done everything. We are doing everything we can to make sure that our solution fits into those complexities as they grow. So nonetheless, from the convenience of a browser or from the convenience of an iPad or something like that, a sales order now can be entered directly. This is the browser-based version of the sales order entry screen. There are a few other examples just to sort of kind of go through these. Some of these, might be relatively simple things, but where tax codes, for example, are set up, this has also become one of those callable objects, which now exposes itself as a web service, which means we're able to create and have this in a browser-based screen. And this is just another example of a number of these things, a number of the callable objects that we have released in the initial release of Exact Macola 10, but expect bunches more of these on every new release or new update to Macola 10 coming down the road. Those of you who may not be familiar with Macola, just generally speaking about the Core ERP side, I think one of the key things to take note of is the fact that this is a highly integrated solution. In fact, all the aspects of this, from the business process management side, which we'll learn about more next week, to all the elements of the Core ERP side. The Core ERP part of our solution is truly all pedigree Macola products. So this isn't just a bunch of bolt-ons glued together. This is a highly integrated solution covering all the aspects of finance and accounting. And reminder that we'll cover this on the 29th. And all the distribution kind of activity, as well as the manufacturing types of activity. Let's talk a little bit more about distribution and manufacturing because we did, in fact, want to discuss that or highlight that a bit in our session today. And we kind of go back and we can also talk a little bit more about order entry. The basic process flow in order entry is a relatively simple one. If you do quotations, for example, what is very powerful for you here is the fact that the quotations can be done remotely. If once again, that's always been a feature that we can do from a remote setting, or if the quotations would be done internally, they can also be done that easily as well. But entering a sales order, as I showed you before, or if I just showed you the old, the client-based application, many of the things that we enter a sales order with or use when we're entering a sales order, the number is automatically assigned with a function key. The customer can easily be looked up. And by the way, one of the things that will continue is going to be the ease of being able to use these lookup and searches to be able to configure these any way that you would like at the user level. So these really become, they're not really a dumb lookup anymore. They really are almost a level of a configurable ad hoc inquiry themselves. But if you do obviously deal with a lot of customers or suppliers or items or something like that, you will certainly be able to take advantage of that and utilize that. But as you can see, the process is very simple because a lot of things are set up as default. So therefore, if you're, you don't have to worry about terms codes or shipping via methods and stuff like that. Unless you do need to change them on an order, you can. But ultimately, when a line item is entered, then somebody can look up a line item through the search. We do have within the system the ability to establish a pricing matrix. So if you do have a somewhat complex, or maybe not even complex, but you do have sort of a matrix on the way you price your goods based on customer, by product, et cetera, all those different kinds of pricing matrices can be set up in our solution. And then the system will know which one to pull and bring on to the sales order itself. And if you want, you can also enable people to be able to change it at the order level if need be. Again, when we talk about configuring screens like this, in either case, the screens can be configured differently. So you can move things around very simply and very easily. You can delete fields if you don't want people to view them. But the designer capability, will still enable people for these client-based screens to be able to configure this screen to suit the specific needs, of an individual in an organization. A few other things on the distribution side that I wanted to point out as well. As far as the process flow of entering an order, capturing an order, and fulfilling an order, there are many different ways you can kind of configure that in your system. Everybody might do it slightly different, in terms of how they pick orders to ship, or whether they are a make-to-order environment, an assemble-to-order environment, or a distributor that just simply pulls off the shelf, pick, packs, and ships it, and even a drop shipper. So some people might purchase things strictly on an order-by-order basis. So a sales order, I don't carry any inventory at all right, but all I do is when I take an order, I cut a purchase order, and I have the vendor direct ship it to a location. All those sort of things are traditionally and continuously supported with the Macola distribution method, or the distribution side of Macola. And it's once again very configurable in terms of how you can set up the actual business process itself. But quite often people would perhaps print an acknowledgement after an order is entered. Now, what we really don't want people to have to do is to do what I'm doing, and that's have to go into this screen, print the acknowledgement, then maybe try to figure out how to email it or scan it or whatever out, or fax it off to a customer. We get into the business activity monitoring side of things, and this will be on the 22nd, 2 weeks from today. And you certainly won't want to miss that, because that is really one of the biggest fun parts of the solution, and that's the ability to automate things. So, between now and then, if you're going to be joining me on the 22nd, begin to think about things in the context of beginning the statement like, wouldn't it be nice if that when I enter an order, the acknowledgement gets automatically sent to the customer. I don't have to do anything, and I don't have to worry about it. It's lights out, done completely automatically. So when you begin, the brainstorm like that with those words, wouldn't it be nice if, guess what? We're going to be able to fill in the rest of that using something from a business activity monitoring. So that's something you certainly don't want to miss on the 22nd of this month, 2 weeks from now. And this is a classic example where somebody wants to send an acknowledgement out. All I did was enter that order, bingo, the acknowledgement goes right out. The picking and packing and shipping side of things as well, it also really does open up a lot of possibilities there. People might just print a pick ticket and have that pick ticket be carried out to the floor, and that becomes what the picker and packer is going to pick from. A copy of it might ultimately become the packing list, and then, ultimately then a copy of that copy is going to go up to to the billing office, and somebody's going to use that to do the billing process, something like that. Of course, it's all different in different environments and different customers. Some people really have, from the standpoint of physically organizing this process in the warehouse, have done a lot to really truly streamline it. The problem might be is that the system hasn't been configured to really reflect that. There's still maybe too much paper that's got to go bouncing around and so forth. So there are a number of options. It isn't really in this agenda for this series, but the algorithm team certainly are aware, of the ability to do a lot of automation there, particularly perhaps using warehouse management tools, barcoding and scanning. So a lot of this fulfillment side of the process can truly be automated, through technology like that, all of which integrates directly into Macola. So it's not, nobody has to worry about integration. It's all already done. But a pick ticket can be printed. If you're not using that technology, the document itself can be printed using, a report writer like Crystal, so you can certainly configure it or modify it any way that you want. But the picking part of it, is a very simple process as well. And people would then, at that point, perhaps go in and print shipping labels, all of which also can be done automatically through a warehouse management type of approach. There might be some steps to confirm ship. Confirm shipping is typically a step that's followed to just sort of decide when you want to deplete inventory for an item as it goes through the fulfillment process. And then we go into the invoicing side of the system as well. So it's a relatively simple, straightforward process. It can, once again, be highly configurable. And the process itself, and again, I'm going to kind of take a guilt trip here and kind of go off agenda a little bit, only because I did want to go to a workspace, once again, show you another example of what some of the innovations with workspaces that we have done in the past. And this is an example of one of the types of workspaces called a process flow workspace. And as you can see, basically what it is, it's an image that essentially reflects the process that I just described to you verbally. And this is great if you've got small organizations and you're bouncing people around in different roles and responsibilities. If they have to perform a transaction or a function in the system, that they'll be able to see from the perspective of where that process fits in the overall organization. And it also is a great training tool because one of the things that we can do with a workspace is also embed a procedure directly into a menu pick. So if a person here has to enter a sales order and we want to be able to, again, it's a new person or a person that's been bounced around, they're not quite sure of the procedure, well, guess what? All they need to do is really go to this icon right here, this little symbol, and be able to open up what we call an in-context document. We'll cover a lot of this more in a couple of sessions, really. The next one, when we get into business process management, we'll spend a great deal of time talking about document management and how to control and set up documents in a repository like a document like this. And then we get into more of the workspace side. We'll talk more about what I'm actually showing you right now, and that's how to embed a document directly into a workspace like this being the type of workspace that we call a process flow type workspace. Going back over to our Core ERP side, obviously one of the bloodlines on the distribution side is, as always, is inventory management itself. And one of the things that we've put a lot of effort into is simplifying the whole process of setting up items and setting up inventory and so forth. And to that end, we have a very simple way to be able to set up the structure of inventory, once again, depending on your specific needs in an organization. And this is really where it all begins. This is essentially the item, and this is the core information about the item that's very important, very essential, and it's going to carry itself through the rest of the processing of this item. But what we've done is we've made it very convenient because we have a lot of item-related places or a lot of cross-reference tables and so forth that are all related to an item. And we made it very easy through these buttons over here to be able to get to those other places if necessary. But certainly beginning here with the core information about the item, you know, the logistical kind of information about the item. We fully support the ability for traceability. This is a very, very important, you know, we often think it's always important in a regulatory controlled company, but it makes sense in any respect. You know, if you do need traceability, if you've got issues with parts perhaps expiring with shelf life and so forth, then the serial lot control that we have, which is assigned here, is a very, very powerful tool that also makes it very easy to be able to trace a lot of something at a low level and know exactly where it ended up going from a customer level. But other kinds of aspects, again, in the short time we have, can't go through these in a lot of detail. I do want to talk a little bit about manufacturing, and we basically have two manufacturing environments. I don't want to really consider them a module per se, because it's more than, in the manufacturing world, it's much more than just what module we're going to use or not. It's truly what environment that we need. And we have two manufacturing environments that will be included in Exact Macola 10. So you don't have to worry about choosing which one or another, but the only thing you might, you know, that you will want to probably address is which one am I going to use to produce an individual item. The primary difference between the two of these is that this environment, which we call production order processing, we often refer to as POP, is an environment that is very inventory oriented, which simply means that it's a work order based system, or a bill of material based work order system. It's just going to allow you to create a work order, to bring in the bill of material, and simply say, okay, I want to make so many widgets, how many did I make? And then when I tell the system how many I made, then it automatically moves the inventory, moves the raw material inventory out of inventory, and puts the finished good into inventory. Beautiful from an inventory standpoint. It couldn't be more simpler, and it couldn't be more effective from the standpoint of focusing on the inventory side of things. But most people in the manufacturing world know, you know, when we talk about manufacturing, there's really, particularly from a cost standpoint, there's three, you know, there are more elements than just the material on the bill of material. There's a big chunk of it called value add cost that gets into labor, overhead, outside processing, things of that nature. And that is really satisfied with our other manufacturing environment that we call shop floor control. Shop floor control is a more of a operations-oriented manufacturing environment. So that's the big difference, the perspective that you can probably think from when you try to think about the differences between the two. One is more of an inventory-oriented type environment, whereas shop floor control is a more operations-oriented type environment. And the operations environment, obviously, what's involved in an operation? Well, the operation's performed somewhere. That would typically be a work center. Operations would be reported. If labor, perhaps, is a major part of your product cost, then the operations environment will certainly give you the ability to track that labor in more detail and be able to also estimate and be able to see, you know, truly how big that labor element is in terms of the overall product cost. So once again, if you're dealing, and if a big part of your product cost is in the value add area of labor, overhead, outside processing, then those items that you produce might be better being produced within the environment of shop floor control. It's not a question of complexity, it's a question of precision. How precise do you want to get in terms of understanding what your true manufacturing costs are? But as you can see, what Macola 10 will allow you to do is decide at the item level which environment you're going to use. You don't have to use one or the other for everything. You can use POP for some and shop floor control for others. And that's particularly useful if you're in what's called a mixed mode environment, where you have two levels of manufacturing. One level, you kind of build up a lot of things for inventory, and there's a lot of perhaps value add that's associated with doing that. And then probably at the end of the line, you pull stuff out of inventory and just do a brief, simple little assembly before you ship. Those items you could do in POP, and those items and the other items that are for inventory, you might want to consider shop floor. That's often referred to as mixed mode manufacturing. So fully supported here, as is the replenishment capabilities also. A lot of that information that's used in replenishment is here, and we fully support the two methods of replenishment that usually applies to most companies, one being order point, that's your min-max level, reorder level as we call it, and the other is MRP. Also similar to the manufacturing environments, they're different in the standpoint of the context for where they work in and how they work. Order point, min-max is usually, I don't want to ever run out of something, so I'm going to keep a minimum stock level. And then MRP basically projects when you will run out of something, and it'll leverage things like lead time to give you enough time to order the material in, because the demand may not be as constant as it is in an order point environment. These are just some other, a few other points from the standpoint of the manufacturing environment in the Core ERP, manufacturing planning, materials planning, the manufacturing methods and environments, POP and shop floor control. And as you can see, there are these menus here that certainly reflect the different access points to perform entries, to perform reporting, to have a series of reports, and both of these environments have an abundance of reports for you to be able to track where things are in manufacturing. And one last other thing, we also have some integrated solutions. They're not out of the box with Macola 10, but if you do find yourself, particularly in an operations kind of environment, having to constantly deal with constraints, machines going down and things like that, and you need something that truly is more finite from the standpoint of manufacturing, planning, and scheduling, something a little bit more advanced, we can answer that for you as well. Not within the out-of-box Macola 10 solution, but the people at Algorithm certainly know what options are available there, so don't think we don't have an answer for that, because we will and do. Okay, and shop floor control side of things, the operations side of things, when we work in that environment, again, for the purpose of precision, not complexity, we do work on setting up the environment itself, and the environment is built around something called a work center. And a work center is essentially a place where an operation is going to be performed. It could be a machine, it could be a bench with 3 people around it. It really is up to how you choose, with our help, to be able to set up the appropriate environment. So, and all those sort of things, plus the actual execution of shop orders and so forth, are all done here. Shop orders, production orders can also be created from the MRP process. MRP, as I said, is a inventory replenishment planning tool, and it creates recommendations that you need to go out and buy something or make something. And from within MRP, you can very easily convert orders from planned orders into actual executable orders, which would be an actual purchase order or an actual production order. So that's really one of the key things in MRP. After the MRP process is run, and after the MRP process, which is the highly analytical process, it's looking at demands, looking at inventory, looking at bill of materials, looking at replenishments, and so forth. People that don't use MRP, that are highly involved either in distribution or distribution and manufacturing, they may not know it, but they may have people running around with sneakers on trying to figure all this out all the time, simply because of the dynamics of the system and your own intentions to try to keep your inventory levels down. This is an enormous tool. This is a tremendous tool for people to help eliminate a lot of that grunt work to figure out what needs to be done, and allows people to focus on executing. and MRP includes a number of reports, and we'll talk a little bit more about how some inventory replenishment concepts that have also worked its way into the business activity monitoring side of things for automating some of those processes, and we'll cover that 2 weeks from now on the 22nd. One thing I wanted to show, we certainly can support purchase orders. A couple of things here from the standpoint of being able to enter a PO. Once again, purchase orders can be done in different ways. Purchase order is something else that we have a callable object for, and we have worked on developing the browser-based interface for that. You can see it here. We're doing a few more things to this, and we'll probably finally put this out in the next release. But just like a sales order, as you saw, a purchase order will also be able to be entered from the convenience of a web browser. Now, as we kind of approach the 10-minute mark, I wanted to just also give you a taste of the quality measurement module. I'm actually going to do that from this workspace, and and you'll notice that when we've designed, configured these workspaces, we've also designed them to where if you are somebody that has enterprise-wide responsibility or kind of has to bounce around perhaps amongst different workspaces, we've used this point here. It's a bicycle now, but it could be your own logo, to be more or less a centralized place where people can navigate to different places in the system. But always remember, any of those menus can be put anywhere you want on the workspace itself. Under quality here, I want to go down to a menu pick here. Okay, let me, pardon me for a second. Let me just clear this up. Apologize for that. Let me come over here. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to kind of go through a lot of the setups and stuff like that, but I want to show you an example of how a specification for quality, and a specification basically means criteria, attributes that the product has to meet coming in from a receiver or being created or produced. I want to be able to show you, how these things can be set up, and I have an item here called QM item, and you'll notice that there's two characteristics that that this item has to meet in order to be accepted into inventory. One is color, and the other is lead content. And what you're able to do now from within Exact Macola 10, as I said before, many people do this completely manual outside of the system, will be to set up a specification. Now there's a number of things that are sort of subtables that get built up in the process, but nonetheless, the ultimate result is going to be a specification like this that's going to reflect the characteristic of color. It's also going to indicate here the instrument, if there's any instrument that's going to be used to do this inspection or test, as well as the lab. The lab is basically, obviously, you would think a facility, which also could be done on the outside from a supplier, but nonetheless, a lab is essentially what's going to be the location where this is going to be done. This is a simple color check, and within this characteristic, we've already defined, in this case, it's got to be one of, it's got to be, it's going to come out either red or blue. Red is good, blue is bad, something like that. But again, these characteristics can be created. They're typically non-measurable type characteristics. They're typically observed characteristics. A measurable type of characteristic might be this lead content, and that's a little bit different because this characteristic and method is actually what we call a value. And a value can be expressed in different ways. It could be a min-max type thing, it could be an absolute number, or it could be a range. And you can see that in this case here, the range, and I put this together not really knowing what I'm talking about when it comes to measuring lead, but it's just a simple range from 20 to 50 that the actual measurement has to be within in order for it to pass this step. And again, the individual tools and so forth would be pointed out here. Some people do skip lot maybe they do every third or every fourth lot coming in. You can simply make that change here, and now it's going to be every third lot if that's what I want to do. So those kind of things, it can fit very well into the way in which the quality of the QC function truly operates. So where this is going to end and where it's going to lead up to is that when an item is received in, and an item would be serialized or a batch control type item, it kind of makes sense so you can associate the results to a specific batch or a lot number or serial number. Then the item will go into an inspection location that's already been previously set up, linked to the final inventory location that perhaps the purchase order was written against. And then we'll be able to go in and what we call maintain the sample. And by maintaining the sample, what that simply means is that when we maintain the sample, we will then enter the actual results from here, in here. So in this case here, you can see that the actual result was 25. That was within specification. It was outside that range. It would know it, and it would flag, and it would actually change this symbol here to a red X, indicating that it was not within specification. So the actual results now are entered directly into Exact Macola 10. The item itself, based on the results, can be automatically routed to either a material hold location or review location or something like that. Obviously, if it meets all the requirements, it'll go directly into the inventory location that the PO or production order was assigned to. And then when that is all complete, then that item now has a quality record associated with that batch number or associated with that serial number. And then through a menu pick, or it can actually be done automatically if that item has been already allocated to a sales order, then we'll be able to print a certification. And these certifications are currently today crystal reports. So with the crystal report itself, we can obviously change the layout of it, use another layout, change it any way that you want, but the certification can either be printed for the actual sample itself, or it can be printed as you're printing documentation for the sales order, because as I said, if it's already assigned to the sales order, you're all set. And then obviously that could be important documentation that would be accompanying the shipment. In any event, the history of all the specifications and all the results per batch and per serial number will be stored in history, so if anything comes up later, you'll always be able to quickly access it. So that is a quick overview of the distribution side of things. Keeping in mind it's all connected, all integrated together. We'll see some of how that's integrated to the finance and accounting side on the 29th, but everything is an integrated solution. The manufacturing side, depending on the environment you choose, is complete. So you're able to use in the shop floor operations environment, creating standards by way of using what's called a routing. Think of a routing as a bill of operations, just like a bill of material is a bill of material. So a routing would enable you to set your standard, even develop cost for, or standard costs for, and then ultimately be what the planned requirements are on a particular shop order or production order. So the core ERP side, I would say once again in closing, keep in mind that all these core ERP functions you see here, are currently in process of becoming callable objects. And our initial bunch of callable objects include like the sales order entry screen that I showed you before. We'll show you perhaps maybe towards the latter part of the series, we'll go on an iPad and I'll actually show you some of that functionality from a tablet type device. But I wanted to, and I'm probably running a little later than I should right now, give you all enough time to raise any questions that you might have. So Sean, I don't know if you want to unmute people, but open it up at this point for questions.
Everyone has been unmuted, so if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them over to Russ.
可能用那个47670注册进去看就没问题了吧？
现在你不都引用过吗？都应该是可以的。我再给他打个电话。
Okay, I don't think that's a question for you, Russ.
I think that's in a different language, so we're going to need translation.
Does anyone have any questions?
With this initial release, specifically, how many callable objects are included in the initial release?
In the initial release, I believe the number is 25.
Okay.
In our document, we do have documentation that does list them all, so we can certainly get that to you if you need it. But the initial release is 25.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm just checking the chat itself. PIC ticket can be printed from a web form. I think that's a question. Actually, it's not a the PIC ticket printing program is not an object at this point. It'll probably be in an upcoming batch of objects. But to answer that question, at this time, it is not printed from a web form. I didn't see it. I don't have anything else in the chat. So if anyone wants to fire away with a question.
Do you know, is there a, do they have a target for the number of releases, you know, per year to, I you know, figure they're going to keep adding the callable objects product. I just wondered if they have a target goal or something of
you know that's an excellent question, and it deserves an answer. I'm just kind of playing around with the answer only because we've actually had a couple of different mentions of what is going to be the frequency of releases. You know, I've heard things like two releases a year. Obviously, and then we kind of qualify it between major releases versus, you know, constant maintenance releases or quality updates and so forth. Let us kind of nail that down for you a little bit. I don't want to tell you anything that is liable to change or subject to change. We're trying to pretty much get our arms around, you know, what's going to become a dependable schedule and cycle for the updates. What is truly being focused on quite a bit right now is the next update, which will be in at some point probably the latter half of the fourth quarter.
Okay.
Okay, well, if that is it for questions, I think that we can wrap this up today. Thank you again for everyone to join us today, and also remember that we have upcoming webinars for the next 3 Fridays, so you can find the signups for those on the algorithminc.com. And thank you again for joining us. I think we'll close out. Take care.
Okay,
thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.